Huh?
Hi everybody, welcome to another video from me going live here on multiple streams. Today I want to talk to you about work-life balance. I was triggered by this actually this morning. There are a number of articles that I was reading and there seems to be a lot of conversation going on around work-life balance in particular in the post-COVID world. You know, what will work-life balance look like for us in this post-COVID world? You know, and an interesting thing about that is a lot of the work that I do, right, is around wellness, right? Because for me, I have this firm belief that that wellness is at the foundation of everything. Right, you know, so if we want our organizations and companies and even countries to function properly, we're going to want to have some decent amount of wellness that is going to allow us to be able to function, right? You know, and it looks a lot like this. So this is a little illustration that I like to use when I'm explaining this, right? So generally speaking, when we look at success in life, we look at, kind of that top of this pyramid that you might see, right? That performance. Performance is fueled by skills, right? You know, in terms of how we apply ourselves on a daily basis. And that's what I like to call the top of the iceberg, right? Because ultimately the other three layers underneath, motivation, resilience, and wellness, we don't see those on a daily basis. Basically, we might see some behaviors as a result of that, right? But at a fundamental level, how we feel dictates how we are going to behave. So if we're not taking care of how we feel, then ultimately, we're not necessarily going to be in control of how we behave, and that's what makes this such an important topic because now that we've spent a number of months in isolation and the world is starting to open up again, in a beautiful way, what's that going to mean for us when we go back to work and our new normal? So I want you to think about this. A lot of my work, especially the assessments that I use, I also measure wellness of people. And there's been a very interesting upward trend in the assessments that I've been doing in the past couple of months when people were actually home. Slowly but surely I've been seeing an upward trend in the wellness of my clients as they go through these assessments. In a post-COVID world, from a brain age perspective, I like to use brain age, brain performance age as a measure of our kind of capacity to be able to apply ourselves based on our wellness. And through various different brain tests and things like that I do with my clients, we can measure at what brain performance age a person is functioning. And the higher the age, usually the slower the brain is functioning, right? So an interesting thing was pre-COVID, the average brain age of my kind of clients when they would start off with the coaching process would be a good 20, 30 years older than their brains actually really are. As where in today's assessments, I'm seeing a lot more even tilted age and brain age, and that's a good sign. That means that not only are we protecting ourselves from COVID, but that the stay-at-home notice has also been really good for the wellness levels of our people. Now, if you want to think about wellness moving forward, what's going to happen when we go back into the office, when we go back into workplaces? What are we going to do to maintain those levels of wellness? People are much more rested. They are a lot happier. They're of course extremely eager to get going with regards to being in the office. But now we're at this unique position because we have this opportunity to to be able to say, hey, instead of building wellness levels for people, with them starting in much older brain ages, we actually have this opportunity to actually kind of maintain their wellness much more so. And what is it really going to take? Forcing people to stay home might not be an option, but what then is the option? And in my opinion, that option is simple. It's are we giving our people enough of an opportunity to help them be aware of where their wellness really is, and the importance for them to maintain that level of wellness, so that we don't start seeing a decrease in those wellness levels later on again, as we always have. Because if we want to have kind of maintain adaptable organizations, I really believe that the learning lesson that's come out of this is that the healthier and the happier our people are, the more adaptable and agile any organization is going to be, and the success of future sustainability for any organization is really going to be around, can you keep your people healthy and happy? And can we make sure that they are given an opportunity to keep themselves healthy and happy through this transition process? And to me, that is the important part of work-life balance, right? Because we've identified that if you can stay at home 100% of your time, wellness levels are going to go up considerably, which is great. But what are we going to do to be able to create some form of balance? And of course, we know that being at work all the time creates a decrease in wellness level. So maybe there is an answer in terms of some form of hybrid solution, that having people work and be at home kind of like in a 50-50 type scenario might be a great way for people to still feel rested, to still feel like they're able to maintain that level of wellness, but at the same time, right, are still able to be productive. They're still able to kind of apply themselves on a daily basis and still feel like they're part of an organization because they're still going to work, right? So Shaima, thanks so much for that comment. I'm happy you agree. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, because this is a live session, which always makes this really, really great. So rather than me just talking away, which I can do for hours, feel free to throw in a comment or ask a question about it, and come forward with regards to. And today, of course, we're talking about wellness in a post-COVID world, right? And it would be great to hear your thinking on this subject as well. Is where do you feel wellness might be relevant or important? It can be important to me, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be important to everybody, right? And that might open up a great conversation as well, right? In my opinion, I think one of the greatest opportunities for us here is to also look at wellness and how it applies to leadership. A good point from Shaima here. The organization can add work from how is optional depends on the person. Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, right? Is maybe giving employees an opportunity to have some form of autonomy, right? With regards to how many hours am I going to spend in the office versus how many hours am I going to spend at home, and maybe that there could be a good trade-off there as well, so that could be a great way for keeping those wellness levels at a higher level now that we have achieved this level of wellness, which is unique, by the way. I mean, we've actually never been in this opportunity where we can actually say, what can we do to maintain wellness levels? For the past 10 years, the conversations have really been about what can we do to improve wellness levels for employees. Now it's the other way around. Now we can say, hey, listen, what can we do to prevent those wellness levels from dropping, right? And there has to be some form of trade-off here. There has to be some form of way where and maybe it's also an awareness thing, right? Is everybody really aware of their wellness levels, right? How do we tell? If our wellness levels are going up, sure, we might feel better, right? But are we still able to take good care of ourselves, and are we able to manage how we're feeling? If we're dealing with large amounts of stress and all of these kind of things, what are the things, self-care things that we can apply, especially when we're at home, right? So that we can make sure that we can deal with these challenges and all of these kind of things. So it is an interesting kind of proposition, right? That we have this opportunity here where we can say, what can we really do to maintain the levels of wellness in our people, and how can we ensure that those levels of wellness stay the way that we want them to be, right? And I think it's a new conversation that we need to launch, and it's probably in the post-COVID world. It's probably going to be one of the most important conversations, because from the conversations that I've been having with a lot of my leaders and that I've been coaching over the past 3-4 months through this COVID period, is the one learning lesson that really keeps coming back is in a post-COVID world. It's going to be a people-first environment that is going to make sure that we can have that level of sustainability, and make sure that we don't end up in the same kind of challenges as we've had in the past. So what better way to create a people-first culture, right? Than putting that wellness level first, putting wellness even before profit. Because wellness does translate into profit. Now, a great question that I had the other day from a company I was speaking with was a question about how do we ensure, right? Because companies do invest a lot of money in wellness initiatives, right? And there are tons of them around there. But how do we ensure that the wellness initiatives that are in place, that people actually follow them? Because what we know from research is that wellness initiatives tend to be very low. Participation rates tend to be very low compared to the amount of initiatives that might be there, making wellness actually a really high-cost initiative for a lot of companies without much real kind of return of investment, right? Because as participation levels are so low. Generally speaking, from the research that I've done, in Asia, participation rates in wellness is in and around 4% for most companies. As where in Western countries, that's more like 8%, right? Hey, we have Krishna on Facebook. How you doing, Krishna? I hope you're doing well, my man. Good friend of mine. And so Krishna, we're talking about wellness, right? So that's right down your alley as well. And what I was mentioning earlier was how do we ensure participation rates, right? It's like companies can invest in wellness initiatives, but how do we get people to actually then take part in them? And that's the other challenge. And what I was saying is that in Western countries, participation rate is also still very low. It's anything from 8 to 15%, which still is a very low number. And this is, of course, all post-COVID world. So that generally there seems to be a a dichotomy here, right? There do seem to be some initiatives in place, but it doesn't necessarily mean that employees feel empowered or feel inspired enough, maybe, to actually take part in these initiatives that may be in place, right? So what's it going to take? What is it going to take for the average employee to to kind of put this in place and say, hey, you know what? Let's do something about this, right? And that to me, that is always a big question. So great comment here again from Shaima, right? To maintain a level of wellness, it's important to each company that they have to follow up on it, right? And the first learning lesson is trust management from the top, right, leader. Yeah, absolutely. So there is as you can see here, there is definitely a connection between trust and wellness, and trust in itself, right, is such an important milestone or pillar when it comes down to mental wellness, right? Because people need to feel safe. People need to feel comfortable to know that they can actually apply themselves, right? So. Oh, that's great. So fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Ivana, thank you so much for that comment. That's a great one. So I'm just reading it. So yeah. So what data do I have? This is my data. This is based. One of the reasons is because I actually do assessments. I do wellness assessment myself, and I've just coincidentally seen an uptick in wellness levels in the people that I've been assessing. So this is strictly my observation. It's not scientific research. It's just I've seen an uptick in my clients and the people that I've worked with compared to groups of people pre-COVID. So the numbers are actually a little bit different, and I found that just really interesting. It's not enough to validate research. But it is an interesting thing that we are actually seeing in a lot of people, that's uptick in wellness. But yes, you are absolutely right. Mental health is a major concern, and we are gradually seeing a decline in mental health in people around the world. So I'm not just talking about the people that I'm working with and the people who are investing in themselves, to become better and healthier and all of that kind of stuff. So that is an absolute good point. I don't know why why my clients I'm just seeing an uptick. It's just an observation, right? Yeah. So hey, Brad, nice to see you as well. Yeah. So thanks for the comment. Yeah. So it is definitely I'm a big Zen believer. So I actually I practice a lot of meditation and things like this, and so does my wife. So we have a very much kind of a Zen household. So hence the picture. Yeah. So it is an interesting conversation, right? And I'm sure there are plenty of organizations, as to Ivana's point. I'm sure there are also plenty of people and organizations who feel exactly the opposite, right? Who may not be seeing an uptick in their mental wellness, but may actually be seeing a downtick. I have had conversations with companies where they have noticed a remarkable increase in stress in certain departments, especially in certain different industries, right? There are industries that have just been hit so hard. I can't imagine those industries having higher levels of wellness. But yeah, I absolutely, Brad. I think mindfulness is a very important part of this. But again, it really comes down to application, right? And how do we help people apply themselves on that day-to-day? I think we all know it's kind of like fitness, right? Fitness and weight loss, right? it's like we all know that you have to eat vegetables and take care of yourself and do all of these kind of things in order to become healthier and fitter. But it doesn't necessarily mean we apply ourselves, that we do it. And with regards to mindfulness and mindful leadership, it's another one of those conversations. How do we take this from knowing what needs to be done to actual action, to actually what's being done? That's something I find quite interesting. Krishna had a great point, right? Krishna says, I feel the positive verbal interactions between the staff and management, that can actually work wonders. So creating conversation, right? I think that is a very important part of this. And as to Ivana's point, the power of checking in, right? Of just checking in with each other, and being able to have kind of that sense of care, right? Are we watching out for each other, right? With that care, are we recognizing in each other, whether or not we're starting to see kind of stress levels and all of that kind of stuff increase and our wellness levels go down. And if we recognize it in each other, is it okay, to give each other some kind of kind feedback on it and compassionate feedback and say, hey, I'm concerned. These are my observations, and I'm concerned about you, right? Is that an appropriate thing to do, right? So that too would be a great conversation, because I'm sure that doesn't happen too often in organizations where people feel like they can talk to each other in that kind of kind and supportive way with regards to each other's wellness. And maybe that is also a very important point here, is that open up the conversation, right? Instead of only having work-related conversations, instead of only having conversations around processes and procedures and revenue, P&L, and all of these kind of things, to then also be able to have conversations about, hey, how are you feeling, right? So great. That's another great question that's coming from Ivana. So Ivana is actually asking, what in my experience, is for successful well-being interventions for an organization. I actually, believe it or not, I actually wrote that in my book. And not that this is a plug for my book, but it is something that I find really important. Ever since I started in this industry many years ago, I've always been concerned with application, because I've always felt like, hey, listen, we can philosophize all day long. We can have theories, and we can have all of these kind of things. But for me, it's about what am I going to do tomorrow, or even better, what am I going to do right now, right? That's going to make a difference in my life. And I've always kind of had that approach that if whatever I am kind of teaching, right, and if that doesn't have some form of applicable explanation or theory or system, how is that really going to help people, right? So there needs to be some application. And the interesting thing that I found when I was doing research many years ago is what moves people is emotion, right? And emotion is the volume button of motivation. Hence, right? That's why emotion, right? So what comes before motion, movement, and it's when we are emotionally invested in in this case wellness, right? If we are actually emotionally invested by that story, that is an important component of actually driving action. Brad has another point here too. He was in a business conference last week. Brad, you're in Vietnam, which is really cool. So four different companies, 4 different industries, and saying that they've all been really proactive, and and that's great. And that they treat each other as family, right? So again, it's about how do you create that level of connectedness, and maybe that is that's something that we have learned from from COVID, right? I think it's something that the business world in general, may have taken a little bit for granted, prior to COVID, right? Prior to that period of time, it was deemed appropriate to only talk about business and to kind of just only focus on business conversations, right? But I think a lot of people are learning that through this COVID period that that we're it's like being a family, right? And treating each other like we would want to be treated ourselves, but also treating other people like we are all one big family, right? And yes, absolutely, family first. I always talk about health, family, and then work, right? So if we can't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of our loved ones, and if we can't take care of our loved ones, we can't take care of our jobs, right? And I think that is absolutely an important thing. But moving that into as to Ivana's point, right? Is how do we then create a tangible working model, right? That allows us to kind of work forward. And there is actually a model right here, and I can actually write this out for you. I'm actually going to do that right now, right? So I don't know if you've ever heard of this model, and it is called ADKAR. Now, ADKAR is an acronym right here, and what ADKAR stands for is awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement, right? And it comes from a guy called Jeff Hyatt, who developed it was a change management model that was developed in, I think, 2007. So it's been around for a while, but it's quite famous in change management theories, and it works really well in wellness application as well. And the beauty of ADKAR is that you will find that in an organization, the population of people, the collective people, are going to be in a different phase of what we call change, right? So change is multiple phases. It's called the trans-theoretical model of change, and the trans-theoretical model of change has multiple levels. It's pre-contemplation, contemplation, and then planning, and then from there, planning is action. And then from there is maintenance. So people have a tendency to go from one stage to another. And when they're in a stage of pre-contemplation, which in reality most people are, most people who are not applying themselves from a wellness standpoint are in that state of not really thinking about it, or they might be thinking about it, which is in contemplation. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it. I can actually write that out for you too. So the way it works is it's pre-contemplation, which is your when you're not thinking about it at all, right? And then we have contemplation, which is your next stage. That's when you follow up on that and you start thinking about it, right? And then, once you're thinking about it, something might trigger you. You might kind of go, yeah, maybe it's time I start doing something about this. And this is called planning, right? So then you start planning. You say, okay, you know what? January 1st, right? January 1st is going to be when I'm going to do this, or whatever the date is. But you're going to start having this idea of okay, this is what I need to do at some point in time. When you do that, you end up going into action. And then action, of course, then you start doing something about it. You'll have a number of experiences with that. I'm just going to move these around just a little bit. There we go. All right, and then after action, you're going to get your maintenance. Sometimes we call that reinforcement, but maintenance is good. So this is known as your trans-theoretical model of change. So every single person who undergoes some form of change is going to go through these various different models. Now, the beautiful thing about this is if you look at ADKAR, so ADKAR, so I'm actually going to write this out. So ADKAR stands for action. This is the way this works. So Ivana, pay attention, all right? Because this is how it's going to work for you. So this is action, all right? So, sorry, this is, what am I writing? This is awareness. We're not there yet. All right, so in your ad card, it starts with awareness. Make it a little smaller so it fits on top there. There we go. So awareness is what people from pre-contemplation need. Now, people then who are in contemplation, right, add car, so that's the D for desire. So they need motivation. So what are the motivation strategies that you could put in place for somebody who is actually contemplating it, right? So they need to be motivated, right? They need to see a lot of imagery of people who are successful. They're inspired by people who are, kind of, doing things that are really successful with this. And then you go from desire, right? You go to K, which is knowledge. So that means that people who are in a state of planning need knowledge, right? So it's kind of like, okay, so I want to do something, I want to plan, right? But what do I do, right? That's when we actually provide them the knowledge. This is how you do it, right? Now, people who then want to step into action, they need to feel empowered. And that feeling of empowered, of course, is known as ability, right? There we go, ability. I'm actually going to make these a little smaller. Just so you got that laid out for you. You can take a screenshot of this if you want to, or you can repeat it. There we go, ability. And then for maintenance, we have reinforcement, right? So how do you reinforce that maintenance? There we go. Beautiful. Right there. See if that fits. Yes, it fits beautifully. All right. So this is kind of like what it looks like. Yeah. So somebody who is in pre-contemplation. Oh, you're most welcome, Ivana. Right. Take that screenshot right here. Wait. Awesome. All right. So you have awareness. Right. Is for people in pre-contemplation, and people who start thinking about it. They need motivation. How do you motivate these people? Right. People who are in the planning phase. Give them knowledge. People who are in action, give them empowerment, right? Make them feel empowered. And then people who are in the maintenance phase, they need more positive reinforcement that they're actually doing a good job and continuing on. So the trick for every organization is to figure out what percentage of my population is in each of these different levels. So is 97% of my population of my organization, if they are in pre-contemplation, will a series of wellness initiatives that I'm throwing into my company, will they be utilized? Chances are not. And what's going to happen is then participation rates are going to drop down. So if you're not seeing participation rates in your wellness program, it's because the population of people are in a different state in your trans-theoretical model of change, right? So think about how you can say, okay, so what if my people are in a pre-contemplation phase? Well, then you put your energy, effort, and your budgets towards building awareness, right? And if a lot of people are thinking about it and they want to be part of it, what can you do to then further motivate them and inspire them? And if you find that there are a lot of people that are actually planning to do something, what can you do to give them knowledge so that they feel empowered to actually do something on their own? And that's where a lot of my work is. So when I kind of figured this out 10 years ago, right? I wanted to come up with some form of way to be able to kind of be a positive influence on helping people come to a level of self-determination. So help them come to that determination, like, hey, listen, I can do this for myself. I can apply this myself. And the way that we do that is through positive psychology. It's not through, offering threats and say, hey, these are the consequences, and you keep doing this, one day you'll have diabetes and heart disease and all. People don't respond to that. What people want to know is, if I change my behavior today, if I invest in, exercising and taking care of myself and doing all of these kind of things, what's going to be the immediate return of investment, right? And in my opinion, the quickest way of doing that is by showing that in real time, right? So that's why I developed this assessment that actually shows brain capacity as well based on their wellness behaviors. And then when they change their wellness behaviors, you actually see the brain capacity go up through using cognitive testing and all of that kind of stuff. And then they kind of go, aha, I get it, right? Because now that I have this greater cognitive capacity, now all of a sudden, right, I can apply myself in a different way, and I can use that cognitive capacity to, apply different skills at work. I can start listening better. I can start being more kind. I can be empathetic. I can be patient. I can be all of these kind of things, right? So that's ADKAR combined with a trans-theoretical model of change, and as I mentioned earlier, it's all in my book, but a screenshot will do. And if you applied something like that, and guys, this doesn't only work at an organizational level. This is also at an individual level. So if you are a personal trainer, or you're anybody who just wants to inspire your kids to be healthier, think about that trans-theoretical model of change, and think about ADKAR on top. What can you do to be that? So did I build my? Yes, I did. So so Ivana, great question. So I built my own assessment, which is what I use in my company now. It's called the Headstrong Assessment, and I can type up the website for you if you want to. So it's headstrongperformance.net. And it's just like the logo at the top. This is the website that you can go to. Click on assessment, and then when you go to the assessment based on products, it will explain to you how the assessment actually works. But yes, so this is an assessment that is all about positive reinforcement to help people kind of understand that their wellness behaviors are affecting the way that they're functioning and performing in life in general, not just at work, but also at work. Right, and I think that's a very important thing to add into this, and then that helps people move quicker through that trans-theoretical model of change, because the moment that they have that insight and they go, I'm now aware, then it becomes easier to kind of move them through that process, right? So that's something for you to think about while you're actually going through that. But yeah, it was a long process. It took me about 4 years to develop the assessment with validations and all of that kind of stuff. It was a great experience, but I still use it today, and it's proving to be very effective. And actually, interestingly, I think much more relevant today too than even compared to pre-COVID. It's a quick and easy assessment. It helps you quickly assess, where you kind of are in your capacity, and what we then look at from a coaching model is what can we do to raise those capacity levels, so that you can kind of be the best version of yourself, not just from a wellness perspective, but also from a performance potential perspective, so that you can really kind of set yourself up for success, which I think should be step one for any form of coaching model. You know what? You are most welcome, Ivana. That's why I like doing these live videos. It's all about sharing, and it's all about just providing information and insights. And if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to just always shoot me a private message. That's my job. I'm always in the business of helping out. So that's all good. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed this live video. I love the interactions. I love the fact that so many people are making comments and coming back to asking good questions, because I love to help. If I don't know the answer, I'll find where I can get it and help you with it. So always tune in. I'm live almost every day. Tune in whenever you can. Tell other people. Share the videos if when you see them online. if you think it's a relevant subject, and yeah, I'm absolutely here to help. So that's all for me today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching today. Thank you, Shaima. You're an absolute star as well. So I'm not going to take any credit from that. So and good luck with your leadership development stuff. So we had a conversation about that a little while ago. So guys, that's all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will speak with you again soon. Oh, and before I go, I have a fantastic episode laid out for you guys next week on Wednesday at 9 a.m. This episode, and I'll do another a live video on this, but I have a fantastic guest from West Coast US. He's going to be chiming in, and he wrote a brilliant book called The Millionaire Teacher. And it's all about financial empowerment. But when you hear this guy's story, wow. His name is Andrew Hallam. I'm so excited to have him on the show. It's going to be a wonderful show that I'm going to share with you guys next week, Wednesday. So next week, Wednesday, 9 a.m. Singapore time. If you happen to be awake and online, tune in for that one, because that's going to be fun. All right. Thank you all so much, and I will speak with you next time. See ya. Bye-bye.